I was thinking all week leading up to this chance to be with you guys, I was thinking, God, what could I provide of value, especially at this time of year, that I hope would be really impactful to you. And so I thought, and I went out to dinner with my wife last night, and we were talking about the month ahead, what we were the most nervous about. And I can tell you that what came up was the holidays. Thanksgiving is 19 days away. Christmas is 46 days away. Now, I don't know everything you have going on in your life. I don't know if Thanksgiving and Christmas are wonderful celebrations, and I hope, my prayer is that it is. But it could also be a really difficult time. It could also be a very complex situation where there's wonderful things to look forward to, but if you're like me, it's an opportunity for me to justify why I should slack off in a number of different ways. So we're a gym, we focus on health, and so clearly that's the area I'm talking about. But it doesn't have to be. So the reason we're sitting down here is we want to do a little pre-planning. Now for you, as we think about the holidays, there's probably lots of things that you can't control. We can't control if Uncle Buck's going to get drunk, all right? We can't control if we got to spend an extra week with the in-laws. But there are a lot of things that we can control. There's good research to support that that's the stuff that we should be focused on. Now, I've been studying the brain through grad school and then just, casually, because I find it interesting, as long as we've had the gym open. And I can tell you that there's some amazing things that happen in the brain. And we're going to dork out for just a second, then we'll get to the application part. Do you ever think that the eyes are the only exposed part of the brain? You ever think of that? That these are the only connection that we have to the thing that is covered with all of this protective layer and tissue and a skull? And if you think about that, there's a good reason. The visual system is responsible for how we make sense of what we're experiencing. There's several lobes that the brain has. There's one lobe where it actually takes something that we see and it transcribes it into data. There's another part of the brain that takes that data and it creates a story. This is well documented. It creates some type of memory that makes sense, and typically we make that in the form of some narrative. Now, the reason I'm sharing that with you is that the prefrontal cortex, or the frontal lobe, has the capacity to do that without actually seeing. And you know that. You can close your eyes and you can visualize something happening, and the clearer it is, the more chance that it could actually happen. Now, there's, in the world of psychology, a really cool, and it's been around since the 80s, model of how we understand behavior. It's called the trans-theoretical model of change. It's a very fancy term of basically just saying, hey, there's all these different theories of change, let's mash them together. And here's the punchline, and then we'll get into the actual work. If I'm talking with you and I say, hey, tell me exactly what you think it's going to look like when you're 20 pounds lighter, and you say, I have no idea what that looks like, that's not a metaphor. It means you literally cannot see it in your mind's eye what life would be like if that were true. Now imagine I asked you that same question and you spelled out exactly what those details were. Which do you think, from a coaching standpoint, would I feel more confident that you'll actually be able to do it? The latter. So all that to say that pre-planning, or being really crystal clear on what you want something to look like, based on what you can control, this little area and this locus of control that you have responsibility for, is super powerful. So with your pad, I'd like for you to open it up, and you can take the Sharpie, or you can take the Bic pen, and we're going to write some what-if statements. Now, typically when we have a sentence stem and we say what if, we're about to what if all the bad stuff. What if Uncle Buck shows up? What if, what's the cousin's name in Christmas Vacation? Eddie. What if Cousin Eddie pulls his RV in the driveway? we're going to suspend reality just for a sec, and we're going to be a little vulnerable. Now, the good news is that what you write, I'm not going to rip out of your hand and showcase to the rest of the group. This is just for you. But you can take a second to be vulnerable. You can take a second to dream. And I want you to create 2 what-if statements. I want one for Thanksgiving, and I want one for Christmas. And I want you to write, what if I was able to, and think about something that's really positive. What if I was able to work out while I'm in Minnesota with my in-laws? What if I was able to have Thanksgiving dinner and be a member of my family, but not have diarrhea afterwards, right? It could be anything. It could be anything that you want it to be. But I'm going to set the clock for 2 minutes, and I want you to write 2 sentences out, just dreaming. There is nothing that has to be logical or skeptical or even cynical. We don't have to base this in reality, but I want you to dream for a sec. What if, and then just finish those sentences, please. What if I could finally? What if it looked like? Anything that comes to mind. This is just between you and the field notes. Give you all the time you need, but when I see that your pen is down, then I'll know we're ready to move forward. Now you might be asking, why are we writing this down? Why can't I just think it? Well, another interesting thing of the brain is that it can hold multiple iterations of something at the same time. It's one of the reasons that it's really hard sometimes to follow through on something. This word procrastination. It's not that we don't know what to do, but sometimes we have these multiple ways of executing something and we want it to be perfect, and so we keep cycling through these different options. By writing it down, you're trapping something on paper that makes it more real. You're saying, this is the thing that I want to accomplish for Thanksgiving. This is the thing that I want to accomplish for Christmas. Does everybody have something written down? Cool, we'll wrap this up pretty quick, but I want to do a few things before we do. Whatever sentence you have there is not good enough. It's not good enough because it's probably not clear enough. Now, to take dreaming, what you just did, to take vulnerability and to make it reality, you have to put some objectivity to it. If your sentence was, hey, what if I could share God's love to my family for the holidays? That's a great sentiment, but it's not actionable. You can't execute on that. You don't know if you've passed or failed. Now, if you took that sentence, you said, what if I was able to interact with every family member and ask them 3 questions that showed that I cared about them? That's something that's a little bit more operational. I can look at that, and on the 20th, I can say, oh, I failed. Or I can look at it and be like, yeah, I totally passed. So we need to, last thing, just to create some pass or fail criteria. So the first thing I want you to do is look at that sentence and make sure it's possessive. That means you need to add yourself to the sentence. If the sentence says, what if we all could, what if I could do this stuff? Insert yourself into it. This isn't a distance of you looking at it. Now you're inserting yourself into the thing that's happening. If that isn't already there, go ahead and just right below that, write the sentence that it should be. Everybody got that? Yeah, a lot of us maybe already wrote that in that same format. Make sure we're good on time here. Next, I want you to add a date to it. I want to know by what date you've accomplished this thing that you're doing. How many times did you exercise? What did nutrition look like? What amount of sleep were you able to get? By what date did this thing go down? And then while you're at it, add any other type of metric that makes sense. Quantify the statement. Quantify exactly how you'll know you passed or you failed. Now look, I don't want anybody to speak up if you don't feel comfortable. But does anybody have a sentence that they would like to volunteer and share? It's okay if we have a resounding no across the board, because I did kind of trick you in saying this was just for you. But if you have something that's like, yeah, I don't mind everybody hearing this, put a little finger in the air. Anybody? Yeah, what do you got, Tom?
What if I was able to enjoy the holidays without being reminded of being type 2 diabetic?
Yeah. Okay, so let's take that and think about what you can control. You can't control if I come up to you and be like, hey, you type 1 diabetic, type 2 diabetic. These little circles, this outer one is what you really care about, but you can't control. So you can't control somebody else coming up to you and saying that. But you can control your response, and you can control the things that you tell yourself, and you can control the people that you're around. So is there anything you'd want to tweak there that makes it more about the actions or the thoughts that you're responsible for versus these other characters in your story that you can't really demand don't say that? What do you think?
I wrote down avoid breads, get fish for myself, just pass on the desserts.
I love that.
I'm not getting
That's great, right? So that stuff is totally, and probably, you know, I'm not psychoanalyzing, but I imagine it's like, hey, how does the holiday not all become about what I'm dealing with from a medical standpoint? And so saying like, hey, I'm going to enjoy Thanksgiving, but these are some things that if I eat them, they're not going to serve me well. So what if I was able to eat a Thanksgiving meal that didn't include things that were going to spike my insulin? That's a great statement. Anybody else?
What if I ran the turkey trot?
I love that. I love that.
But then I struggle, like, what if no one wants to go with me? Will I be motivated to do it by myself?
Is there somebody that you know you could wrangle into doing it with you?
Possibly.
Who's that?
My sister-in-law.
Okay, so your sentence needs to become what?
I need to ask her ahead of time, hey, let's
Yeah. What if I could run the turkey trot with my sister-in-law at 8 a.m. downtown on the 19th? Write that down. Anybody else? Are you getting it? Are you picking up what we're putting down? One more example for us just to tweak as a teachable experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you have guests in town, I feel like I always feel selfish or guilty by leaving or going to work out, right? So I said, you know, what if I just took 30 minutes, got up before everybody else, just to squeeze it in?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Right?
What if I got up 30 minutes before everybody else and I gave family a heads up that this is something that I was going to do so they weren't surprised by it?
Right.
Absolutely. Mine's the same thing. Hey, what if while I'm with Kelly's family, I could communicate how I'm going to exercise and they shouldn't be surprised and I shouldn't feel guilty about it? Guys, good? Keep an eye on that little sentence. Maybe use the field notes for exactly what it's designed to get some research and development on how this goes. I find that everything I do, that's not an exaggeration. If I can't see it, I won't do it. If I can't see it, I won't do it. I think discipline doesn't mean that you're denying yourself. I think motivation and discipline is being so clear about something that looks so inviting that you'll just do it. I'm convinced that if you can't see it, you can't do it. And so whenever there's a lack of motivation, or you say even to yourself, oh, I'm totally gonna do this holiday season, and you don't do it, it's because you didn't go through these little steps. You didn't write it down. You didn't spell it out. You didn't objectify it. And you didn't put a date on the calendar. So you have your dates, you have your sentence, and that's it. Thank you guys for your attention. Thank you for letting us do that. Thank you for letting me coach you this morning. And that's a wrap. On the count of 3, we'll clap once. 1, 2, 3. Thank you guys for being here.